Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving straight into the grim, almost corporate-like ladder of organized crime. We're going to break down the highly structured and incredibly lethal progression of a cartel empire. We'll trace that journey from the lowest street corner all the way to the absolute top. Now, to really understand this world, we need to step directly into the shoes of the source material. So picture this. You're 14 years old. You're sitting on a loud, sweltering street corner with a crack phone in one hand and a cheap two-way radio in the other. And you're about to find out the answer to a very deadly question. What exactly is the fastest way out of poverty and into a grave?
Let's look at levels 1 and 2, the replaceable furniture.
So at level 1, you start out as a lookout. You're out there making split-second, life-or-death decisions on who gets to approach your block. And the pressure is unimaginable, because a single missed text message literally means you disappear. For this constant, terrifying vigilance, you're paid just $50 a week in cash. Now, to a 14-year-old, sure, that feels like an absolute fortune. But to the organization, you're nothing more than replaceable street furniture. You're just a cheap corporate commodity in a massive machine built entirely on human lives. But hey, if you keep your head down, stay quiet, and don't make any mistakes, you hit level 2 by the time you're 17. You graduate to courier. They toss you the keys to a rattling semi-truck with dozens of white bricks of cocaine stashed under rusty floor panels. You're tasked with driving a highly specific, highly dangerous route, starting in Sinaloa, heading up to Tijuana, making it to a port, and finally loading it onto a boat. And let me tell you, every single police checkpoint along the way feels like a death sentence.
At this point, you're making real money, right? You start feeling invincible. But then, one of your friends gets handed a 20-year prison sentence for doing the exact same run in the exact same kind of truck. That is when this profound realization hits you like a ton of bricks. There's this chilling quote directly from our source material that sums it up perfectly. Your survival so far is based purely on luck. You survived simply because it wasn't your turn yet.
Moving on to levels 3 and 4, middle management and escalating violence.
Welcome to middle management. You're now a tax collector, tasked with kicking in doors and squeezing envelopes of cash out of local businesses. Suddenly, your pay jumps to about $1,500 a week. You're out there buying heavy gold chains, flashy new motorcycles, the works. But it comes at a steep price, your anonymity. Everyone in the neighborhood knows your face now, which means every door you open could very well be your last. Then, your predecessor, a guy named Julio, is shot dead and replaced in just 2 days without anyone batting an eye. That's when you finally grasp the dark truth of your job. Your brutal actions, they aren't business transactions. They're just cartel communications. You realize you aren't a businessman at all. You are simply a message. And just like Julio, you are entirely expendable. This whole career path ages you at a terrifying speed. By the time you're barely 22 years old, you get bumped up to a level 4 crew leader. They hand you 10 hungry men, a stash of assault rifles, and tell you to completely control an entire section of the barrio. Now, as a crew leader, you could be pulling in up to $20,000. But here's the catch. You're no longer climbing the ladder, you're just balancing on it. You're constantly trying to balance these multiplying threats. We're talking rivals invading your zone, civilian casualties making the evening news, your own men stealing or talking way too much, and of course, bosses who will permanently replace you if you fail. One soft or hard decision means you lose sleep or you lose your life.
This brings us to levels 5 and 6. Executives and paranoia.
If you somehow survive and hit level 5 as a zone controller, the sheer scale of the violence just explodes. Now you're orchestrating 30 guys in black SUVs and laundering hundreds of thousands of dollars through seemingly legal companies. On paper, you're a legitimate businessman, but in reality, it's a life of absolute, suffocating paranoia. You completely stop using normal phones, you're changing cars every week, sleeping in a different house every night, and spending hours sitting in dark rooms just obsessively watching security feeds. You finally realize you don't actually control the streets control you. By age 30, you hit level 6, regional boss. You're the big leagues now, moving cocaine across entire continents. But the stakes are astronomically high. Our source material describes this crazy scenario where a missing $2 million shipment forces you to question your closest, most loyal friends. It gets so bad that you ultimately end up burying 2 of your own men in the hills because you suspect someone betrayed you.
You have immense power, endless money, and massive influence. You're shaking hands with politicians and police commanders, but you have absolutely zero peace. You're getting crushed by relentless, overwhelming pressures. The government wants arrests. Foreign agencies want names. Your rivals want your seat, and your own people want your job. You are completely surrounded by lethal threats from every conceivable angle.
And that leads us to level 7, the Kingpin's cage.
You've done it. You've reached the absolute pinnacle of this dark ladder. You're controlling routes from the Andes and pulling in billions of dollars. But your existence practically becomes a ghost story. The paranoia is total. Doctors are surgically altering your nose and jaw just to hide your face. Your own children have to call you uncle when they visit. There's a $10 million bounty hanging over your head, and literally every single person, even your own trusted brother, is viewed as a lethal threat.
Sitting behind 20-foot-high electric fences, surrounded by attack dogs, you arrive at this devastating epiphany. You didn't build an empire, you built a cage. And now, you're trapped inside it. You can't trust anyone, you can't stay in any city for more than a few days at a time, and extreme violence constantly follows you like a shadow.
Next is level 8, the inevitable fall.
See, the end in this world never, ever happens slowly. One day, someone finally talks. A 4 a.m. helicopter raid shatters your empire in a matter of hours. You're flown away in chains to a lightless, maximum security prison, and your entire world shrinks down to a brutal daily ratio, 23 hours a day completely alone in a silent concrete box, and exactly 1 hour inside a steel cage for exercise. In there, your billions of dollars, your highly feared name, and your global influence mean absolutely nothing. It is just total silence.
Which brings us to the final stage, level 9. The cycle repeats. You might think the organization dies with you, right? But the most chilling fact from the source material is just how efficiently this machine moves on without its CEO. It takes just 3 days. 3 days after your arrest, a meeting is held. Your top lieutenant, or maybe the very man who betrayed you in the first place, just casually takes your seat. Routes are reassigned, bank accounts are reopened, and violence is scheduled as if you never even existed. Your name? It just becomes history, a warning that parents whisper to their sons.
And meanwhile, down the hill, outside a small corner store in the barrio, a new kid with a cheap two-way radio takes up the very first post you ever held. He's sitting there waiting for his chance, watching the street for headlights.
That 14-year-old doesn't know your story. He doesn't know about the silent concrete box or the horrific ending that comes with it. All he knows is that this is the fastest way out of his grinding poverty. And because of that, the tragic, bloody cycle continues completely unbroken. So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative question to think about. When the ultimate prize for reaching the very top is really just another kind of cage, what does that tell us about the powerful illusions of wealth and the sheer depth of desperation that keep this entire system alive? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today.